Hello, one and all. Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And in this video, we will explore if self-propelled howitzers are obsolete. It just so happens that the other day, I ended up in an argument in a YouTube comment section argument. The best kind. The ones, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I can't help myself. If one kicks off, I need to dive in there. And it just so happens it came about that this argument was between me and Andrew Perpetua, the guy who makes these awesome maps following the front line in Ukraine. And he also lists all the destroyed vehicles for every day. And it's just a ton of really interesting and important information that he provides us with on the ongoings in the Ukraine war. And he was of the opinion that self-propelled howitzers are obsolete and apparently also kind of silly with relying on magical cranes and what have you to load the guns. I don't know. So I disagreed, and we ended up in a YouTube comment argument of classic proportions, right? But the topic itself I find interesting. The topic is interesting. Are self-propelled howitzers obsolete? Do towed artillery have any advantages? And are the really small guns, the 105 millimeter guns, superior to the 155 millimeter guns, right? So we're gonna take a look at that. We're gonna take a look at my argument with Andrew, and let's take a look at some of the losses suffered by artillery down in Ukraine. So yeah, I ended up in a full-blown YouTube comment section argument. The worst type of argument you can ever have. But I can't help myself. I just dive straight in. I kind of like him. Anyways, we have with Andrew Perpetua, like I said, right? Incredible. So it begins with that he replies to ATP Geopolitics here. That people talk about archers firing once every 6 seconds or something, but ignore you have to reload the gun using a magical crane. 3 different loading mechanisms and a safety glass as well. So he has a problem with the archer. So we're going to take a look at the archer. Literally, you have to hide behind the glass wall or it won't load the shell. If you try loading without hiding it, like angrily beeps at you or you're hiding, something like that. Now my reaction is, so I reply, counter battle radar, cluster munitions, have fun with your towed guns, because ATP Geopolitics makes a point in his video of a post made by Andrew on Twitter or X or whatever, that you should move away from self-propelled guns, that they are obsolete, and you should focus on 105 millimeter guns instead, these smaller guns. And we'll take a look why that is, why he points that out, because there is a reason for that, but we'll take a look at that later on. But first off, we need to take a look at what he gets wrong about the archer, I think. So sorry, I had music on. Oh, wait, hang on. Let's mute that shit. So here's the archer, right? It drives in. Now remember, he says, talking about reloading. And, right? This is the archer. No one steps outside. Now, all people, there's like 3 here. No one back here. There's no one back here, right? No one steps outside. No one operates it like the Caesar or anything. Everyone is here, protected in here. And here we go. Boom. 23 seconds to the first round fired. Okay? And now time to impact. I mean, it depends on the range of where the target's at. But in the second round in 32 seconds. And 8 seconds later, another round. And now it decides 3 rounds is enough. pack it in. Right? No one has stepped outside. No one is breaking their backs operating this vehicle. So the glass wall, I mean, that is when you're reloading it. So you have a magazine of, what is it, 20 rounds in here? It has 20 rounds that it can fire without reloading, without any human being involved in reloading it. Right? Now it drives off. Okay, so kind of important. So what is the magical crane he's talking about? Well, here you have, that's the magical crane. Where you have a archer, it pulls out a combat area and meets up somewhere randomly with this truck that provides the ammunition. That is all there. So you meet up with the truck, random location that cannot be predetermined or should not be predetermined. Here you see the truck with the crane, you reload it, and you reload the 20 rounds in 10 minutes. And then you disperse. That is the magical crane he's talking about, right? So you fire your 20 rounds in the field at the enemy, and when you run out of ammo, you pull out of the combat area and link up with this truck somewhere, preferably out of range of the enemy. Reload in 10 minutes, disperse. The truck goes off to wherever it needs to go, and then the archer can, when maybe it moves on to refuel, for instance, or it moves back into the combat area to launch another 20 rounds. So that is the magical crane he's talking about, and the glass shield you have to stand behind. Right? This is not a Caesar, quite obviously, and I'll show you how a Caesar operates. So here we have a Caesar. Or a version of it, used by Ukraine. It has been a very effective, it is one of Ukraine's most effective guns, to put it mildly. They're in no hurry, obviously, but still, here you can see, Caesar comes in, you step outside, unlike with the Archer. Archer is operated by 3 people, can be operated by a single person, by the way. You can compare it here to the Caesar. Here we take a look. Magical crane. I guess this is a magical crane with the Caesar as well. Maybe that's why he's confused it. That could be the confusion here between the Archer and Caesar from Andrew. How long have we... This is now at 1 minute. We're now at the 1 minute mark. Haven't fired a single shot yet. If you compare it to the Archer, things are still happening here. It takes time. It's a big artillery piece, right? Magic crane gets into action. Magic crane is hard at work. And we are about to fire here soon, I think anytime soon. Here we go, loading in with the round, in with the propellant. First round is loaded. We are now at 148. 150, we got a shot off. 150. Yeah. So this is the Caesar. Now this is really important. Take a look at the Caesar here. Now when it begins firing, it is fast as hell but setting things up and stuff like that, it takes time. It really, and it fires a couple of rounds. Does it ever? No, when we see it firing, rate of fire and stuff like that. So Andrew, he doesn't like these self-propelled guns. He thinks they're obsolete. And so... like I said, counter-battle radar, so you zoom in, you pinpoint where the gun is firing from, and then you can fire your own artillery at it until it is destroyed, right? And then his response to it, it is adorable that you think counter-battery fire is the biggest threat to artillery pieces. It is. It is counter-battery that destroys towed guns. So my response to this is, let's use mortars as an example then. 120 mm mortars, for instance, big, they're heavy, take time to set up, takes time to move them, relocate, and it's a bitch to operate. But they work. They work. They work perfectly as they are. But we do see more and more mortar carriers. In Sweden, we have a twin-linked. We have a CV90 that has dual 120 mm mortars, and it provides protection. Yes, with the self-propelled guns, mobility. You can open fire faster, and you can relocate faster once you're finished firing. And if you come under fire, you can relocate. And you can move with advancing troops, and you can get out of harm's way and realign fire as needed much faster. And so my question is, are you more vulnerable to incoming fire if you slow down movement, reduce protection, and stay longer in the target area? And are you more effective with slower rates of fire that are less accurate and more time consuming to align on target, right? Fair questions, I think. So then he mentions this. What's funny is that in a recent OP4, I guess it's an OP4 is opposing force. If you're in an exercise and have OP4, that means you're fighting against someone. It's just not shooting at targets at a range or anything. So they deployed 2 battalions of artillery, 18 guns on either side, in other words. One did shoot and scoot, and the other didn't. The one that did shoot and scoot had like 90% casualties. Remember that. We need to remember this. The one that did shoot and scoot had like 90% casualties. And the one that did not shoot and scoot took 0 casualties. 0 casualties. 0. And then I kind of find it funny. Americans watching this, I'm sorry, but I am no fan of the Paladin. It's slow. It came about in the 50s, right? It's old. So it fires 3 rounds per minute at most, maybe 6, right? Meanwhile, we have like the Beacon 1 in the 60s that managed to fire 14 to 15 rounds in 45 seconds. And later on in the 70s, you had a gun that is now used on the Archer, firing 4 rounds in 9 seconds. A towed artillery piece firing 4 rounds. It had a magic crane, though. Should be noted. It did have a magical crane. And no glass shield between the loader and the gun or whatever. So a magical crane, 4 rounds in 9 seconds. But you see, using the Paladin to gauge if shoot and scoot is effective might not be the best. But anyway, so reality is his bar, is what he says. Not the fantasy that self-propelled guns are effective weapons, because they simply aren't. Self-propelled guns are largely obsolete. Right? And take a look. Self-propelled guns don't get destroyed in counter battery fire because they move out of the way. Right? They move out. And it's not the real threat to artillery. It is advanced recon. The guns that get destroyed while driving. Especially with modern munitions that easily hit moving targets. You don't even wait for a stop and take them like this modern. Moving equals dead. So we have to keep this in mind, right? So he says that self-propelled guns don't get destroyed in counter battery fire. Awesome. So they work. Counter battery is not the real threat to artillery. That's weird, isn't that? That's it. No, this is wrong. To be honest, it is counter battery fire that is the massive threat to artillery. And he thinks I'm living in the past that doesn't exist anymore, and blah 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 blah. So I mean. And then he says this, and not only that, I work with artillery officers in militaries around the world, proving them with, I guess, providing with statistics. And that's awesome. That is so cool, if that's the case. If that is true, that he has actually moved into becoming a military contractor. And this has been a driving force in these changes of perspective, and driving these militaries to both rethink their plans and so, So I ask him, well, then you know that in order for towed artillery to survive, the number one tactic is dispersion. Enemy fire will hit you, so to survive, you ensure as few guns gets hit as possible, right? That is how towed artillery survives, spreading out. But towed artillery cannot avoid getting hit, because eventually they will find you and aim artillery at you, right? And I continue between counter-battle radar, drones, and recon spotting supply trucks, because stationary guns need ammo, so the supplies need to drive straight up to them, right? Just like he claims that these self-propelled guns will be found when they're moving, supply trucks will be spotted, and they will drive straight up to a gun. And those guns will be found out and hit. And this is why everyone wants faster moving, faster firing artillery. Now, tow guns won't go away. They're cheap and offer volume of fire, because that's what you want from artillery. Mortars won't go away either, and they all fill a role. And so does self-propelled howitzers. And a self-propelled gun on the move might get spotted by a drone or recon, right? They might. There's no guarantee. There's not, sneaky rangers doing reconnaissance in every bush, along every dirt track, along every dirt road. And even if you had tens of thousands of drones in the skies, there's no guarantee they will see you, right? And keep this in mind, because we will return to this. And, a towed gun that fires will be spotted. I mean, if you have recon in the area, they will hear it, right? If you have counter-battle radar, they will be able to locate the area. And if you have drones, they will look and, fly around until they see a gun firing, or if they have the area figured out by reconnaissance satellites and counter-battery radar, the drones will just, go do a grid search until they find a gun. I mean, a towed gun will get found and get fired upon. But I'm wrong. You seem to think counter-battery radar is some magical thing. Even with radar, it is incredibly difficult to spot a towed gun. That is the point. They are extremely difficult to find. And he hasn't, I guess the conversation ended here when I asked, dispersion has not been the number one tactic to avoid hits for artillery, and aiming multiple guns at one target to saturate an area to ensure a hit is not how the artillery duel has been fought for 100 years. And that saturation is not the reason for dispersion, because of the risk of losing too many guns if they are positioned too close to each other, right? So what you do is, when you find an artillery piece, a single artillery piece, or back in the day, you usually used 5 to 10 guns to try and hit it. So half a battalion, right? So half the guns of a single battalion would be used to engage a single artillery piece and saturate the area where you think it is, hoping that some of those 50 rounds strike close enough to ensure a kill. And that is how the artillery duel has been fought. Until recently, when you now have more accurate target acquisition, and you can rely on 2 to 3 rounds instead of 30 rounds to get that lethal hit, right? So, with all that said, let's take a look at, we have the M777, right, and others, but let's focus on the M77 here, 155 millimeter towed howitzer, right? So you have this site here, Army Recognition Group, and this is from the 5th of December, and they talk about how this towed howitzer has is incredibly important for Ukraine, and it is. All artillery is incredibly important, right? All of it. So I'm not in the corner that these are obsolete or anything. at the moment, one should add. And I'm definitely not in the corner that self-propelled guns are obsolete. But let's take a look at here. Additionally, the M77 offers no protective armor. It's a gun out in the open with troops running around it, leaving its crew exposed to significant risks during firing and redeployment phases. These vulnerabilities have resulted in notable losses, with approximately 1/3 of the M77 units delivered to Ukraine reported as destroyed or heavily damaged, according to open source analysis. So this is December of 2024, and here is a report from May 14th, 2023, so well over a year ago. And Russia hits immobile and predictable M777, AHS Crab, and M109 howitzers hard. And we're gonna take a look at these mobile guns, why they're being hit. Remember, predictable. And here we have from the 14th of May 2023. Ukraine's loss rates are brutal. Of the approximately 152 big M777 155mm towed howitzers that officially arrived in Ukraine, over a third have already been damaged or destroyed. Right? Static guns. Effective guns. There's no doubt about it. These guns are effective and Ukraine needs them. But over a third have been taken out. So now remember when Andrew said that in this artillery duel, the fixed guns took out 90% of the self-propelled guns, and the self-propelled guns did not take out a single fixed gun. So that was in a training. This is real war when the enemy is firing at you for real. 1/3 of the static M77 guns have been destroyed. And from this same article, we have imagery of Russian strikes on the NATO standard howitzer show signs that the successfully targeted guns had become static battlefield assets, firing from positions heaped with piles of shells or blasting away from long-standing battlefield emplacements. Detritus around many of the hit guns suggest they had been firing from a single position long enough for Russia's ponderous command and control apparatus to swing into action, ambushing Ukraine's big guns. Right? And down here we have the Crab. It's a Polish self-propelled gun. America's functional equivalent, the hard-working M109 mobile howitzer, are getting hit rather hard, with loss rates ranging somewhere between 18 to 21%. With over 180 delivered, at least 36 have been damaged or destroyed. Again, imagery of successful Russian strikes. There was some advertisement in between here, so that's why I cut it up. Strike suggests roughly half the destroyed mobile howitzers were caught in static firing points or had set into a pattern operating from detectable positions. Right? Half of the 36, 18, right? 18 guns destroyed or damaged because caught in static firing positions or had set into a pattern operating for detectable, right? Moving the same route over and over again, back and forth. So once you figured out that they're coming down this route, you can now move in attack drones to wait for them to show up, or you can have a scout drone spot them, and then you call in artillery that had been waiting. Half of the mobile guns had been destroyed in that way. Right? Compare that to a third of the M777s being destroyed by being static. So here you have 30%, roughly 33% if it's a third. Here you have 21% of the M109s, and 18 of them have been destroyed when they were conducting proper shoot and scoot tactics. Proper shoot and scoot tactics. But I mean, in that OP4 exercise, it was 90% destroyed self-propelled guns and no static guns destroyed. Yet here is a proper real war, and the numbers show something else. Now, if we continue here, same article. Now, remember, it's May 14th. But here we have the French-built Caesar. Remember, we took a look at the Caesar earlier. At the time of writing this article, they had received 49 of those artillery, of those mobile guns. And open source researchers have reported only 2 hits. Now, at present, they have, I believe it's 67. And they have lost 7 Caesars. 4 destroyed and 3 damaged. So roughly 10% of the Caesars provided have been hit. 10% of the Caesars have been struck by Russia, relying on shoot and scoot tactics. Right? And then you have the German Panzerhaubitze 2000. I believe it has had some mobility issues down in Ukraine. But it's interesting, though, that at the time of the article, Ukraine had received 20 and had only lost 1, despite all the intensive use. And it had not been destroyed, it had been damaged. It says this low loss rate may reflect the high profile and specialized nature of these platforms, making Ukraine focus on minimizing the risk to these hard-hitting long-range plans. That may also be it. But even so, it still shows you that these mobile guns are difficult to find and difficult to destroy when they employ proper tactics. When they don't use the same road to move back and forth all the time, when they don't remain stationary, because when they remain stationary, they become just another towed artillery piece, and you are easy to find and you will get destroyed. So you have the Caesar that has lost 10%. The Panzerhaubitze, I don't know what the current number of destroyed Panzerhaubitze are at the moment, but what, 5-10% there as well? It's and then you compare it to the M777, where it's as high as 30%. Right? So clearly, the big difference between these guns is that the guns that get destroyed less are mobile. Right? Clearly. Now, Andrew, he was talking about that he wanted smaller guns, 105mm guns, static guns, towed guns, to be more to become the future of artillery. And as he says, the self-propelled guns are obsolete. And I think this is where he's coming from. So in Ukraine at the time, this is the same article as before. So May 14th, 2023. At least 166 105mm towed artillery pieces have arrived in Ukraine. And according to open source researchers, they have only confirmed damage to a single 105mm gun. Right? Gun! I'm not completely well here, still got some throat issues. Right? That is a significant difference. But as it says here, they are generally only half the weight of the M777. They're smaller, pack far less of a punch than the longer range 155mm projectiles. The little guns operate close to the front line, where defenses and jammers may make life a little harder for Russia's fleet of artillery hunting drones. Changing tactical circumstances can also force the guns to move about the battlefield, right? So you're closer to the front line. So when things happen, when the enemy pushes you back, you have to relocate. That's what he's talking about. Or move with your own troops as they're advancing. Conversely, 105mm gun crews operating 10 miles from their targets know they can be targeted by a wide array of Russian ordnance, so they may be incentivized to reflexively shoot and scoot. That's the author's own words, but I think that should keep that in mind. And he continues a bit later on talking about the smaller guns as well as the self-propelled guns, like the Caesar, where you have the crew outside of the truck, right? Or the vehicle. Again, crew staffing these relatively unarmored gun carriages are incentivized to shoot and scoot. And unlike Ukraine's tracked self-propelled artillery, the wheeled howitzer, while it may not be as mobile as tracked vehicle, is far harder for Russian analysts to track down. Right? So when you have troops that are exposed, they are incentivized to move around, to stay out of harm's way, and that includes the Caesar as well as these lighter guns, right? And since they are closer to the front line, they may have to move back and forth even more because they're closer to the action and need to relocate and what have you. So now we have the 105mm howitzers, right? Close to the front line, small, short range, barely getting hit, apparently, right? A third of these guns, these types of guns, are getting hit because they are stationary, right? They can't move, so a third of them gets hit because once you find them, they're gone. And maybe a poor example, we have lost 3 out of 8 archers too early on, probably because Russia put great emphasis on finding them and destroying them for propaganda purposes, bypassing other targets in order to locate and find these, since they knew which unit was operating them. But I mean, the Caesar, you lost 10%. The Paladin, you've lost 20%. And some of the other guns have, and then 1 out of 20 of the Panzerhaubitz and stuff like that, right? So between these two, clearly these guns are the more effective in staying safe, in keeping the troops alive. These types of guns keep troops alive to a better degree than towed artillery. Not saying that towed artillery is obsolete, because they're cheaper, you can bring in loads of them, they have excellent range, and you can provide huge volumes of fire. But if you want to focus on these guys, they are limited by range. So that means you need a new type of propellant to increase the range. And you also need longer barrels to facilitate all the energy you get out of the new propellant. But if these guys become the norm, it's just regular artillery duel, old school, without these, right? And that means you will focus on finding these just as you've focused on finding these, right? This gun is this gun. This gun needs all the support that this gun needs, right? With supply trucks and everything, and you still have a bunch of guys trying to move it around. What it can do is relocate faster and set things up faster, since it's lighter than the M777 and these larger guns. But essentially, you're still back in fighting these large guns, but you're now going to focus on finding these smaller guns instead, if these become the main choice, as Andrew Perpetua suggests, right? And why are they also less targeted? Maybe because these are the focus. These guns are more dangerous, so there's a greater focus on finding them instead of these guys. And they're also closer to the front line, so there's more jamming in place that makes it difficult for drones to operate where they are operating, maybe. Right? But all guns are effective. All guns have a role to fill, obviously. Right? They all have a purpose. They can all fill a role on the battlefield, just like mortars. You have light mortars, 61 millimeter, then you have the medium mortars, 81 millimeter, and then the big mortars, 120 millimeters. And some of them are put in mortar carriages, right? Armored vehicles that drive around with a mortar on top, just like this guy here. But instead of the howitzer, it's a mortar, right? And they all have a role to fill. But quite clearly, shoot and scoot is effective in actual warfare. The numbers clearly indicate that. 67 Caesars and only 7 hit, 4 destroyed, 3 damaged, compared to a third of the M777s. And 20% roughly of the Paladins at the time of that article. 20%. So one mobile gun had 10%, another mobile gun had 20%. Meanwhile, the big guns, they're up at 30%. But since they are not hit, is that an indication that we should make the shift to only have these and focus on these and not these? They have far longer range. Remove these guns and focus on these guns. These guns will outshoot these guns every day of the week. They can move in, open fire at extreme range compared to these guns, and then, fall back without worrying being hit by these guys. So the artillery duel is lost. They don't have the range of the self-propelled guns. They don't have the rate of fire of the self-propelled guns. They cannot relocate as fast as the self-propelled guns. They cannot adjust to a new fire mission on the drop of a hat like a self-propelled gun. So who will win the artillery duel between these light guns and this gun? I mean, you need all of them. You need all of them. These guns have a massive advantage over towed artillery. Towed artillery has an advantage in numbers, and you can provide huge quantities of fire brought down on the enemy at a relatively cheap compared to bringing the same numbers of SPGs, right? So, I mean, I don't understand the argument that these guns are the future when they have short. I mean, and if we got new propellant, so you extend their range. Well, that propellant can be used in this gun. Then you're just gonna use this cool new propellant to increase the range of this gun, right? So it doesn't really make sense. And I mean, we've been talking about counter battle radar here, and what is it? Well, you have Ukraine has received a couple of various versions of it, but taking a look at Arthur, developed by Sweden, it can determine the location of enemy howitzers at a distance of 20 to 25 kilometers. Short range, you're well within range of the enemy artillery, and even longer when you're looking at mortars. And Arthur can simultaneously scan up to, I guess this is in perfect conditions, 100 targets per minute, track the flight of shells, and calculate hit points to correct its own artillery. So even if it's not operating at peak efficiency, say you have 50 targets per minute, right? Might be one of the reasons why we're seeing so many destroyed Russian artillery pieces, because of these things. And then you have, in addition to the Arthurs, Ukraine has also received Cobra radar systems from Germany, with a detection range of up to 100 kilometers, and Cobra can detect and classify up to 40 batteries within 2 minutes, right? So even if this one isn't operating at peak efficiency, you can still find 10 to 20 batteries pretty quickly. And if you don't relocate within a minute or 2 minutes, chances are that you will be hit. And if you stay in place for a couple of days in a static positions, eventually you will be hit if the enemy has these in place. And as you can see here in the black cartoon thing here, how it does it, the target scans, the radar scans for the artillery shells, and you map out a couple of positions where you have it in the air, and then from those positions you can figure out the trajectory between those two positions, and then you know how to follow the trajectory back to the ground, and that is where the gun is. So you can basically use these over the horizon, essentially, or from behind cover, as long as you can catch the artillery shells as they're moving up before hitting the top there, before the trajectory goes downwards again. So as long as you can see the artillery shells going up, you can calculate the trajectory down back to the ground where it's located. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're seeing so many Russian artillery pieces getting taken out, because Ukraine has access to these excellent radar systems that allows them to target artillery quite accurately. And how is Ukraine avoiding getting killed by similar Russian systems and Russian counter battery fire? Apparently it is mobility. 7 Caesars out of 67, and 20% of the Paladins. Those are good numbers, and they do indicate that mobile artillery pieces are effective and they keep the crews alive. And whenever I make videos, I often think about the Dunning-Krueger effect and the Dunning-Krueger chart graph. Where am I when I'm making my videos, when I'm talking about stuff? Where on this chart am I? I guess I'm up here playing King of the Hill, and right, especially in this on this topic, me and Andrew, where are we? I guess we're up here somewhere. If we're on the ups, going up or going down, I don't know, but I guess we're here. Potentially maybe up here playing King of the Hill, but maybe I'm here and he's down here. But I think it's interesting. I think about this a lot when I make videos. Where am I when I'm talking bullshit? Am I up here thinking I'm, I know everything, or is it that I actually, I'm down here somewhere and it's fascinating. But in my argument with Andrew, I quoted a U.S. Army general who earlier this year had made a statement that towed artillery appears to be having less and less significance on the battlefield, judged by how things are progressing in Ukraine. And Andrew said that the general had gone to Ukraine and then had changed his opinion. I don't know. I haven't found that article or that quote from the general in question. So maybe one of you guys can find it. But a general thought that, we're seeing that speed, mobility, and an increase in firepower is more important than being cheap and having numbers and being stationary, because you're going to lose so many guns to incoming enemy fire. The general, he should be over here, right? That's where he should be. And me and Andrew, we're over here somewhere, up here. Who knows? But I haven't found the quote when he says, I was wrong, towed artillery is king of the hill. and the self-propelled guns will become obsolete. Or if I don't know. Anyway, but yeah. At this point, oh my god, how long is it? Holy shit, 45 minutes of me rambling bullshit? I'm definitely up here. God damn. And that's gonna have to be it. Long rant about, well, I am king of the hill of the Dunning-Krueger chart. God damn, a long rant about a bunch of stuff. But I mean, I think the reality down in Ukraine kind of proves that you can get away with self-propelled guns and use them effectively. We see it with the Caesar, with the Paladins, and ordinary artillery will get hit because it's ordinary artillery. And so yeah, I think self-propelled guns, counter battery radar, and drones, all of that combined, will eventually down the line probably phase out towed artillery more and more, but not anytime soon. It is effective to have lots and lots of guns opening fire at one small area. That's just how it is, and it's cheaper than having self-propelled guns. Obviously, demands more manpower though. So I mean, there are so many things to take into consideration with these things, but overall, I think we have seen evidence that Western self-propelled guns, they work, they are effective, and when used properly, it is difficult to locate and attack them. Anyway, that's it. I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye.